Hello, my brothers and sisters, and welcome back to Off the Beaten Path, the show that looks at paranormal events both historically as well as in modern day times. As always, I'm your host, Reverend Hagen, and I have not been on the air for over 4 years, and a lot's happened since then. We've had a pandemic, global pandemic. We've had elections in this country, and chaos, and semi-normalcy, and chaos again. I mean, who can forget the great toilet paper war of 2020? It was the worst of times. I don't know about the best of times, but it was the worst of times. It was chaos, my brothers and sisters. So I decided fairly recently to start up my show again. Now, I know some of you may be asking yourselves, Rev, where the hell have you been? What's going on? And I'd just like to say, well, it's none of your business, and frankly, I resent your question. So, anywho's, I've got two stories to come back with this time. One is a disappearance, and another is a very strange lake that I think bears some looking into. Our first story is actually about David Lang. Now, our first story takes place on September 23rd, 1880, in a small farm outside of Gallatin, Tennessee. The farm in question was owned by a guy named David Lang. Now, David Lang had just talked to his wife and kids on the porch and was heading off across the field to take care of some farming business. At the same time he was starting off across the field, a carriage was coming by with two people in the carriage. Now, as he makes his way across the field, in mid-stride, he disappears. Completely disappears. Now, of course, his wife and kids and the two people in the carriage whose attention had been caught by him walking across the field think, well, he must have tripped or fallen in a hole or something. But they come running over to see if he's okay, and he's gone. And there's no hole, and there's nothing for this guy to trip on. The wife becomes absolutely hysterical. They end up taking her back inside. The two carriage people start looking around, but they realize this is an emergency. So an all-out search is underway now for David Lang. They search for days and find nothing. Finally, the search is called off. The wife and kids are devastated. There is no trace of David Lang to be found. Now, imagine this. Seeing somebody that you love walking and then just vanishing. It's not like she took her eyes away and came back and he was gone. He just vanished. This is absolutely devastating for the family. Now, a year to the day later, his daughter went to the spot where David had disappeared and was kind of saying a prayer and just talking to her dad about how much she missed him, about the times they had together and how empty her life was without him. She even called out to her father, and there was nothing. She turned around after saying her piece and heard her father yelling for help. She didn't know where it was coming from. She turned around and said, Dad? Father? I'm sure she didn't use Dad because it was 1880, but she said, Father? Nothing. She goes to turn around again and she hears it again. She hears her father yelling for help, but the calls are coming from beneath the ground. She has no idea what to do. She goes and gets her mom, and her mom hears it too. For the next 24 to 48 hours, they hear their father and their loved one, her loved one, the mother, they hear him calling, David calling for help. Slowly, the cries fade away over those 24 to 48 hours. And he's never heard from again. That is crazy. So what happened to him? What's a rational explanation for this happening to David Lang? Now, you're going to see, I hope you saw in this story, and you're going to see in subsequent stories that, excuse me, that sometimes there is no rational explanation. This crazy world that we live in, the paranormal, if you will, is part of that world. I don't know anybody that doesn't have a ghost story or know somebody in the family that has a ghost story. Somebody that's seen a UFO. Bigfoot, whatever the case may be, whatever cryptoid story, almost every family has some part of the paranormal in it. It's been in culture since we sat around the fire in the caveman times telling stories. We scratched them on the walls of caves way, way back in the day. And it's still happening today. So for my money, the paranormal is just a part of the gig. It's part of being here on this earth. Like it or not. I know a lot of skeptics out there are going to go, Rev, you're out of your frickin' mind. Am I? Because here's another story for you. Our next story concerns Lake Baikal. Now, I'm going to give you some kind of mundane facts about this lake because it's a pretty amazing lake even without the paranormal. The Lake Baikal, excuse me, a little brain glitch there. Lake Baikal is located in southern Siberia. It's the deepest freshwater lake in the world, reaching a maximum depth of 1,642 meters. Now, for this stuff, I'm going to be referring to the notes. It's a little dry, I know, but get that. 1,642 meters deep. That's like some of the trenches in the ocean. It's crazy. It's the deepest lake in the world. Not only that, but it has 5,670 cubic miles of water. That's more than all the Great Lakes in North America combined. Insane. During the cold months, it gets minus 2 degrees Fahrenheit, and in the summer months, it gets up to 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Both of those are Fahrenheit. It's also considered one of the world's clearest lake, as you can see by this picture. Crazy. And one of the oldest. It's 25 to 30 million years old. This thing's been around for a very, very long time. Okay. Lake Baikal is also the home of thousands of species of plants and animals, many of them endemic to the area. It's also the home of the Buryat tribe. Excuse me if I'm slaughtering that. My dyslexia is a terrible thing. It's also the home to the Buryat tribe. Excuse me. I know I'm butchering the name. My dyslexia is a terrible thing. These guys raise goats, camels, cattle, sheep, and horses on the eastern side of the lake. So not only is Lake Baikal old, fabulous, incredibly deep, and wild, it's also a very mysterious place and has been for a very long time. And not just mysterious, terribly mysterious. What I mean by that is the local people have seen lights around the area, over the lake, have seen things coming out of the lake, but it wasn't until towards the end of the Soviet era, the Soviet Union, that reports actually came out of the Kremlin. And the only reason we know that is because after the fall, those files were released to the public. And then later on, when Putin came over, who had worked for the KGB, he'd been involved in the Soviet Union way before this. But once he came back into power and is now running Russia, he kind of put the kibosh on these reports coming out. But they were already reported, and they already came out. So, for the first kind of incident that we're going to talk about, I'm actually just going to read it to you because it's the witness's statement. And I don't want to get anything wrong, and I want you to get a clear picture of what's going on here. This took place on April 17th, which is my birthday, by the way, 1987, which is not the year I was born, at Kerma, which is in the, bear with me on this, Irkutsk region. Sorry for butchering it, Irkutsk people. And it's told by Valerie, here we go again, Rudzentovs. I'm sure that's the wrong name. I am so sorry. My dyslexia is a terrible thing to waste. So this is in her own words. There were 13 of us at about 12:20 a.m. One of our guys went into the yard. A few seconds later, runs and calls all of us out. He stood in the center of the yard and pointed his finger to the sky. Diagonally from his gesture, 150 meters above us, hung a huge flying saucer. From the center of the plate went a phosphorescent purple ray, and at the edges of the plate were yellow portholes, almost like in our own rule houses. The diameter of the plate was 70 meters. We saw it so clearly, and for a long time, someone even suggested we throw a stone at it. I don't know if that's the wisest course of action. The weather was amazingly quiet. No sound was heard from the hanging saucer, although behind us, in the village of Kerma, there were notices of dog barking, of lowing cows. Everybody was spellbound watching this thing. It was a full moon, and the visibility was so clear that not one of us could doubt the reality of what we were seeing. And then the plate slid smoothly away, sailed along the shore of the bay, and further slipped into the hills of Olkhon. Neither before nor after have I ever met such a thing. But since that time, it's been kind of a sacrilege to me not to believe in UFOs. My friend Alexander, a hunter, and his colleagues who've lived in the area for 20 years often see UFOs, and all is fine. He's still alive. So if you speak about glowing balls or cigars, we constantly see these things on the shores of Lake Baikal. They exist. Now, a lot of the weird English in that was from the translation from whatever dialect they use in Siberia to English. So I do apologize for that, but that's wild. So these people in 1987 saw a UFO above the lake. And what's wild to me is that especially in 1987, they were compelled to report this. They reported this to the Soviet Union. Absolutely wild. These next stories are going to be coming kind of fast and furious, or these next incidents that happen at Lake Baikal, until we get to the one that kind of really set things off, or at least put it on the map for me as a researcher. I had never heard of Lake Baikal until a few years back. The first one is in 1958, a Tu-154 fighter crashed into Lake Baikal, supposedly being chased by a UFO. In 1977, two researchers, and I'm going to read their names so I can butcher them, V. Alexandrov and G. Liverstoff, I'm so sorry, were exploring the depths of Lake Baikal in a submersible. Now, a ship went by them, a USO, if you will, a unidentified submersible object, went by at a high rate of speed, much faster than you'd expect even a submarine to be going under the water. It went off in a distance, and then they saw a purple light. The purple light actually hit their submersible, and their entire system shut down. They were absolutely panicked and starting to sink in the water. Then a few minutes later, everything came back on, and they were able to make it back up to the surface. Now, this is the story that got me researching Lake Baikal, okay? In 1982, 7 divers were, from the Soviet Union, were exploring the lake, and were just a few meters down when a USO, again, passed them at a high rate of speed. They ended up going down 50 meters or so and encountering a group of beings. They were 3 meters tall, so that's roughly 9 feet tall, right? With silverish suits. The description of their actual suits are a little, some say they were blue, some say they were silver. What they did seem to have is almost a biological helmet over their heads. Their whole getup seemed to be organic, if you will. Of course, the divers were like, holy shit. These things actually surrounded them, and somebody in the group had this great idea that they should grab one and take it back up to the surface. Smooth move, right? Unbelievable. We're such human beings sometimes. Anyway, so he goes to grab this being, and all of a sudden, all 7 divers are shot to the surface and land. They come out I think they said 10 to 20 meters, and then land on the ice of Lake Baikal. Now, they all suffer from the bends, right? And that is, the bends are when you come up out of the water too fast and the oxygen in your blood expands and it can kill you. And in fact, did. 3 out of the 7 divers were killed. This was on an official report from the Soviet Union that was released and now is almost impossible to find. The internet can be so frustrating with that stuff now. But imagine that. You're underwater. You see, I have to assume, and maybe wrongly so, but I kind of assume this was a military kind of a gig. And these guys were under the water looking for something. With the history of this lake, it doesn't surprise me at all, especially if a plane had gone down. Locals had been seeing UFOs right and left, right? Excuse me. And so these people are down, these 7 divers are down looking at the lake, trying to figure out what's going on in this lake. I can't imagine they could go too deep because it's the deepest lake on planet Earth. But they're down there exploring this lake. A USO goes by. They keep going further down, right? And encounter these beings that were clearly not human. Now, I don't know about you. I was in the military. I served in the Army, right? Even when I was in the Army, my first reaction, I can't imagine, would be, hey, you know what would be a great idea? Let me grab one of these guys. But I don't think any of them could have expected to be shot up out of the water, 10 to 20 feet up, and then land on the ice. It's incredible. So what were these people? Now, a lot of people are just going to naturally assume, oh, they're aliens. Clearly they're from another planet. That could be. It could be that another civilization has built itself underwater, kind of a la Aquaman, but without the tights. I think you know what I'm saying. And I'm sure that if that did happen, they wouldn't look like you and I. They would be adapted to the water. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm not saying that they were a civilization from under the water. I'm not saying they're UFOs or inhabitants of UFOs or alien beings. I'm not saying they're from another dimension. But something happened there. That's just wild to me. And again, so these kind of things seem to happen all over the planet. These paranormal gigs. And I know that the UFO phenomenon, or the UAP that they're called now, unidentified aerial phenomenon. I know that doesn't always fall under the purview of the paranormal, but just kind of the strange and unusual, right? This place is so much weirder than most people want to believe, and I really believe that a lot of that is, if you can't count on reality, what can you count on? Well, if your reality doesn't include these strange and unusual things, I personally think you might be in denial. I don't know. That's just me. So that was the crazy story of Lake Baikal and of Mr. David Lang. Let's not forget about him. I hope you enjoyed the show. It's so fun being back. It's so fun making these things again. Please, please, please like, subscribe, comment. Any kind of interaction on these videos helps me so much. If you really do enjoy this and you enjoy the content, please do so. I also have a Patreon page. I don't have enough subscribers for a members gig on YouTube. Hopefully one day. Either way, I'm still going to be making videos. But if you could join the Patreon page, even for $2 a month, whatever helps out incredibly. The goal for me on this show is to continue to do this format. But my dream is to be able to go to some of these places and do boots on the ground investigations. I've been doing paranormal investigations for well over 30 years. To me, it's not about proving anything. It's just about helping people out, which is what we've done, for the last 20 years, is my organization, Where Angels Fear to Tread. It's all through email, usually through somebody we've helped before will message us and say, look, my friend needs help. Can they contact you? I'll say, yeah. They shoot me an email. The reason I go through email and not a phone number initially is to weed out some of the crazy people. And I know coming from me, oh sweet irony, but it's just kind of a fact of life. And then we'll take it from there. I have a new buddy that's an investigator with me who's incredibly talented investigator. We're going to start doing investigations of our own. But my dream for this show is to be able to take it to, you know, Snake Hill, to go to Sedona, to go to Skinwalker Ranch one day, or all the other ranches that are around. There's like 3 different crazy ranches with crazy amounts of paranormal stuff going on. Go on a Bigfoot hunt. Check out some of the Dogman stories with boots on the ground investigation. You can only do that with your help. So, if that sounds like something you're interested, please join my Patreon page. The link is below. Again, like, comment, subscribe. Love you guys. Love doing this. And as always, my brothers and sisters, you keep those heads up. Have a great day.